to the Crosstown Baseball Show. I'm your host, Anthony Schullo. You can follow me at Crosstown Sox on Twitter. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Anthony Romanelli. Romanelli, how's it going this week?
Going well. How are you?
Good. I know you've probably been hearing, and I know I have on my end, people have been telling us that we should figure out some sort of nickname since we both have, we are both Anthony's and we both start with an A name.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of lost because I know AA is not going to work. That would be no trouble. You had thrown out yesterday the AA squad or something like that.
Yeah, like AA baseball, AA, chalk talk, something like that.
And then we can add a third Anthony and eventually be the AAA team. There you go.
Yeah. If when we meet, when we officially have Captain Cubbo on, if his first name is Anthony, we're golden.
Oh, that would be great. I don't even know. What is his first name?
No, Captain?
Oh, a captain.
It's Captain Cubbo.
Captain Cubbo, Captain Crunch. I think all the first name captains It's funny because when I thought about the AA thing, did you watch or have you ever seen The Big Bang Theory?
Oh, yeah.
I always think of that episode when they're doing the physics bowl and they come up with names for their team and Sheldon does Army Ants and it appears AA on the sweater. And then the other team is Perpetual Motion Squad, which terribly is PMS. So I just was thinking about that after you mentioned that earlier. But glad to have everyone here today. We're sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties earlier in the week. We usually record Sunday evenings and get you out a fresh episode on Mondays. Obviously, we're a little late to the game this week. But as a reminder, before we get into the show today, all of our content is on YouTube. So you're able to see our beautiful faces, see some great content that we share on the screen. So please go ahead and help us out big time by going to YouTube, subscribing, liking some videos, sharing with your friends and family and everyone under the sun, so that we can, have some fun with more folks. Romanelli's with his beautiful highlighted sign.
My fourth grade sign.
Fourth grade sign. That is some great artwork. It's almost like you made it on Kid Picks. Do you remember Kid Picks?
I do. I just don't want that sheet to get ruined or destroyed by my cats.
Oh, no, don't. If you need to frame it, by all means. More power to you. Put it right behind you on the wall. I have all my fancy stuff. You need to upgrade. Put a sign.
I'll picture my kids and my subscribe to YouTube.
Correct. No particular order, obviously. No. But we are happy to have you here following us on YouTube. YouTube is really the way to go now that we're doing YouTube because we are going to be showing some visuals like we are today in our conversation. And not to say you can't enjoy the show audio only, because we'll have that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get it. So you'll be listening to us any way you want, audio or video, but we highly encourage you to get to the YouTube side of things. Hey, there you go. Oh, that's my dog barking in the background, which is lovely.
There's me with Fergie Jenkins and my youngest, Jordan. And here was me with Bill Buckner and Jordan in 2017, speaking of visuals and my big nose. But yeah, that just happened to be on my table as we were talking.
Nice. Well, hey, see, you have some good things, just not behind you, but on your table. That counts for something. That's okay.
I need to rearrange my office.
But what I will say, folks, is, like I said, do us a big favor. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, like the YouTube page. We are going to be doing a variety of different content. You may already see we posted our View from My Seat or Crosstown View series on YouTube, and we're going to be getting creative with more content. So be on the lookout, subscribe so you get those notifications every time a video drops. So, unfortunately, we usually, we have a good time on these shows, but today, I did want to start with something, certainly a little more somber, out of the White Sox side of news. Today, we did hear that, White Sox starting pitcher Mike Clevenger, who they actually, signed over this offseason, actually is dealing with sexual assault and abuse allegations from a previous girlfriend, domestic violence allegation. So this actually came out of The Athletic. It looks like that he's facing allegations of domestic violence involving the mother of his 10-year-old daughter and child abuse as well. There is an individual, mother of Clevenger's child, that came out and said that there were some things done to her and the child. And it was really hard to read that, not going to lie. I can speak on behalf of both of us. We have daughters. Both of us have two daughters, actually, Romanelli and I. And so all around, not a good thing. Forget baseball for a second and just consider that obviously they are allegations. And certainly if they are true, that is horrendous. I did want to share what the White Sox said. They did release a statement today from the team. The White Sox said in a statement, I'll quote it here, quote, "Major League Baseball and the Chicago White Sox take any and all allegations very seriously, and the White Sox are completely supportive of the joint domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse policy shared by MLB and the MLBPA. MLB opened an investigation after learning of these allegations. The White Sox were not aware of the allegations or the investigation at the time of his signing. The White Sox will refrain from comment until MLB's investigative process has reached its conclusion," end quote. What I will say, and obviously I know you have some thoughts on this too, Romanelli, but before we even get there, I am seeing on White Sox Twitter an uproar, and rightfully so. In any respect, this is not great news, and you never want to hear this. But I'm also seeing people jump the gun a little bit and kind of start to really lay into the team on whether or not they knew about this before they signed him and all of that. And hey, this team sucks, and I want to drop my season tickets. And I just want to make 2 points here, 2 very important points. Number one, obviously it's very courageous for this young lady to step up and share this and come out publicly with this, because it's a very hard thing to do. It's very courageous, and there's a lot of women out there that don't do it for a variety of reasons that we do not need to get into. Having said that, we also need to let the investigative process, unfold and be responsible and let MLB do its job. And as we all seen from the Trevor Bauer situation, unfortunately, rather recently, they take it very seriously and they go through that process diligently. What I will say is, to be a little more personal here, folks, in the day job, I'm a human resources executive, if you can believe that. Talk baseball at night, do HR stuff during the day. And I want us to be very careful getting on the White Sox here, because knowing what I do about these sort of rules and policies, it is handled extremely confidentially in all cases. And it is very likely, in fact, I'd be willing to bet that the White Sox really did not know about this because of the confidentiality baked into these policies, and for good reasons for everyone involved. So not great. That really kind of put a pin in my stomach today, Romanelli.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, as soon as I saw the news, you were the first one I texted, like, hey, did you see this? And how terrible. And then you talk about the Twitter bashing. I think it's natural for people to lash out at any team who allows someone who did what Clevenger allegedly did to keep him on board. And how dare the White Sox support him or have him on the team. But there's no way, I would bet anything that there's no way that the White Sox knew, and not shame on them. There are things that are kept secret and people don't know, and then somebody comes forward and you have to pump the brakes on everything. And Twitter is a nightmare. It's a place for people to go, and yes, you congratulate those that do well, but then you have the keyboard warriors, they're called, that just go off on, and again, if it were the Cubs, they'd be going off on stuff with the Cubs. Imagine if Twitter was around, 20 some odd years ago when Sosa was juicing. Imagine that. Like, it would be everywhere. So it's just another avenue for people to complain. And it's easier to complain than support. And it's sad. It's sad beyond all recognition that poor woman had to go through that. I feel for the White Sox, the family of that young woman. Again, if all of this is true, clearly, if this is true, Clevenger needs to get some help.
Yeah.
And, from there, everything is one step at a time. But it's absolutely put a cloud, not only over the White Sox, but Major League Baseball, especially as they just within the last month or so, allowed Bauer to come back. Now, to acknowledge Bauer coming back is one thing, but note that no one has picked him up since his allegations. So it's very possible that even if Clevenger is found innocent, that his career may be over. And that is just as sad. So,
yeah.
And again, obviously the violence, trumps everything. And nor should he be allowed to pitch if that truly did happen. He needs to get help.
Absolutely.
First and foremost.
Absolutely. Well, and you said exactly kind of went on to what I wanted to wrap this up on is kind of what this means for the White Sox. And quite frankly, I feel for the organization. I do, in my heart of hearts, do think for a lot of reasons that they did not know about this, because as people and even as an organization, you would not want to sign on to something like this, obviously. And what I'll say is right now that organization is on standstill. They're in very murky waters waiting to see what the results of that investigation are. And I can tell you, I'm confident after that investigation is over that they're going to do the right thing. And only after that, if they don't, then I'm going to come down hard on that organization. But it is too early. We need to wait.
Then you'll come back to the north side.
Right.
You made that too easy.
Let's not count our chickens before they hatch here.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think it's too early. Let's wait and see. Needless to say, not something the Sox nor anyone should have to deal with right now, which is unfortunate.
One last thing, and then we can move on, is I do hope now obviously the process needs to, work itself out. I do hope, for the sake of the organization and Major League Baseball, and again, I don't know that it's possible, but if they can try and again, it's a little bit of a selfish thought on my part, or the part of baseball as a collective whole, can they get this wrapped up before spring training? So the White Sox can move forward. So baseball can move forward. You don't want that black eye as a team. You don't want that black eye as a company or a corporation, as the way Major League Baseball is. No one wants that black eye. So again, I say it selfishly, like, get it done so the world can move on. But who knows how long that's going to take? Because no matter what is said, Griffol's answer is going to be like, we're cooperating with the investigation from today until it's over. Well, what's the status with Clevenger? We're cooperating with the organization. That's all he can say.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Again, selfishly, for baseball's sake and for the White Sox sake, I want it to be over before spring training.
Could not agree more. I sure hope so. So let's move on, folks, to our main topic today, because we're here to talk baseball and all fun things. So first thing I'll say is sorry if you hear my dog in the background. He's in a mood today, and apparently is barking at like lint rolling across the floor. So I don't even know what he's doing. He's a temperamental guy. But we are starting our division previews today. As we mentioned, we were going to be doing a preview of every division in Major League Baseball leading up to spring training, which remarkably is just a little over 3 weeks away. And I don't know about you, like, I just have this huge itch this year to get baseball started.
Yep.
So I can't think of a better thing to start with than looking at the divisions. Particularly today, we're going to be looking at the AL and NL Central, obviously the respective divisions of our teams. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to dive into looking at the AL Central and NL Central standings here in 2022, looking at where the teams fell. And then we're also going to take a look at the impact ads that each of these teams made over the offseason and really kind of talk about what the Cubs and the Sox are facing going into 2023. So, of course, we are going to start with the AL Central because we've talked a lot of Cubs over the last couple of weeks, and I think it's my turn.
It is your turn. It is your turn. You waited long enough.
Yay. All right. So let's go ahead and first jump into the standings for the AL Central. So we'll put that up here for our YouTube folks. You're able to see the standings up here. And what we do have is, as far as putting these standings up here for you, we have, of course, the wins and losses. We have the games back in the division. And one other thing I put in here, because I personally love looking at this as a nice stat, is run differential. And essentially, run differential is essentially how many runs is this team putting up compared to the competition. So, for example, as you see here, you're going to see run differentials that are a plus number or a minus number. If it's a plus number, that means the team produced that many more runs than their competition. If it's a negative number, that means that their competition scored more runs than that team. We'll talk about that in action here in a second. But for those of you who are looking at this on the screen here, we have in the AL Central in 2022, the Guardians really surprised everyone and took the top spot. They went 92 and 70 to win that division and had a plus 64 run differential. The White Sox, of course, as we know, had a middling season at 81 and 81, exactly at 500. And they were, I think people forget this, 11 games out of that first place spot, and they had a negative 31 run differential. In third place were the Twins, winning 78 games, 14 games back. They actually had a plus 12 run differential. When I saw that, you often see that the plus run differentials are the first 1, 2, maybe 3 teams in the standings. In this case, the Sox had a negative and still ended up at second place. I think that's crazy.
It is crazy. It was, you and I talked about this prior. I'm going to go back a little bit in history, like a year. I became so anti-Guardians when they changed their name from the Indians to the Guardians. And not because I was pro-Indian. It was because they stole their name from a roller skating team. Like how terribly unoriginal. So I was very anti-Guardian. And then they had to you paid off a third, a roller skating team. Like how pathetic.
Very weird. Like that, where's the due diligence there? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And at least they had Terry Francona, who we both very much admire and like and respect as a manager. So I was happy for the Guardians, I guess. I just can't anymore with that name. So as we look at the White Sox, to be in second place at an even 500, it was fantastic for them. But for them to still have a run differential of negative 31 and still be in second place says to me that had they played good ball, there was I'm not going to say the division was for a taking, but they could have given the Guardians a run for their money.
Absolutely the case.
And then without jumping too far ahead, in looking at the stat that's on the screen, I laughed to myself because Detroit and Kansas City were a negative 326, a negative differential of 300. They had to score 327 more runs to be in the positive. That's awful.
It is.
That's telling me you and I could put a double-A team together, and like the double A's, you and I, the double-A team, could put a double-A team together, and I promise you not come up with negative 156 or negative 157 with a run differential. There's no way. That's embarrassing. That's to the point where every one of those fans for Detroit and Kansas City should have just been let into the park for free.
Yes. Yeah. And trust me, we can have hours-long conversations about competitiveness in baseball because that's a whole other problem, and we should do a whole episode just on that alone.
I can't. Go ahead.
But these two teams, Detroit and Kansas City, are Exhibit A and Exhibit B, along with other exhibits of teams that need to get it together to just make the game more exciting. I mean, 66 and 65 wins in a season, I would like to think the days of that are over, but clearly not.
No, and one other thing that I thought of earlier today when thinking about this conversation is 4 of these 5 teams are mid-market teams. The only big market team are the Cubs. I'm sorry, are the Sox.
Yeah.
They're the only big market team. Cleveland, mid-market. Minnesota, mid-market. Detroit, mid-market. Kansas City, mid-market. Those are all mid-market teams or smaller market teams.
Yeah.
And the White Sox are the biggest team to have the most amount of money, to spend the most, to, again, not to buy a pennant necessarily, but definitely to be more competitive. And the Guardians kind of blew everybody away.
They did. And what I'll say, just to make sure we kind of think about, this is good for everyone to know, whether you're seeing us or hearing us, we did mention that the Sox did have a negative 31 run differential despite being in second place. Now, you made a good point. If they were to just either stay healthy or, as this number indicates, had a little bit better of offensive numbers, they could have walked away with 90 plus wins. This negative run differential, despite going 81-81, tells me that their pitching is what carried them through the season, which was absolutely the story for the Sox in 2022 because they couldn't stay healthy, they couldn't hit home runs, they couldn't get on base. So it was a kind of their Achilles heel all season.
And they gotten to 85 or maybe even 87 wins, they could have made the wild card. They were close, but they really fell apart at the end. Everything about them and Anderson and then La Russa, there was very little joy at the end of the season, even though they ended up at 500. There just wasn't.
No, there absolutely wasn't. So what I want to do is I do want to talk about now moving to the AL Central, kind of those additions. So what exactly did these teams do so far in the offseason? Now, mind you, the offseason is not over, but it's mostly over. So any of the big additions, exactly. So the additions are, I would call kind of the impact additions, are additions that are most likely made. And then obviously going into spring training here, you may get people doing some non-roster invites, minor league deals, things like that. But I just want to kind of read through some of the additions that these teams did make so far, starting with the Guardians. We'll go in order of the standings. So with the Guardians, they added catcher Mike Zunino. They added first baseman Josh Bell. The Sox, of course, we've talked about some of these names. They added Andrew Benintendi. Yes, they added starting pitcher Mike Clevenger. They added 3 outfielders on minor league deals. That includes Victor Reyes. Billy Hamilton's returning to the Sox on a minor year deal, as is Jake Marisnick. The Twins on here, I put for an ad Carlos Correa because he was not supposed to be on the Twins twice and is now back on the Twins, which to me is a huge ad because you weren't expecting him to join your team. We also have the Twins acquiring outfield Joey Gallo, catcher Christian Vasquez, who's a very skilled defensive catcher, and then arguably a number 1 or 2 pitcher in a trade with the Marlins, acquiring starting pitcher Pablo Lopez. The Tigers simply are just dazed and confused. They didn't sign anyone of impact. I don't know what the hell they're doing. They go out. They don't. They went out and signed last offseason Eduardo Rodriguez. They signed Javi Baez. They traded for Austin Meadows. And this year they're like, are we playing baseball? I don't even know.
Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see. Kansas City Royals acquired went ahead and acquired someone that is actually familiar to you, Romanelli. They closed their Aroldis Chapman. They acquired starting pitcher Jordan Lyles and starting pitcher Ryan Yarbrough. So when you look at this list and look at some of the moves the AL Central teams have made, kind of what jumps out at you?
Benintendi for the White Sox. I'm super excited to watch him. I loved him from the day I saw him. So I'm excited for him as an addition. Carlos Correa just makes me laugh and laugh and laugh. I hope, and again, not to wish ill will on him personally, but with all the issues with that ankle, I do kind of hope it crumbles and Minnesota goes down in flames to give the White Sox a chance. Again, they just have to get better to try and catch Cleveland, because I don't care who else is on Cleveland. You're also playing one of the best managers that's ever managed the game in Terry Francona, and that man is just a natural coach and a natural manager and a natural leader. But back to the list itself, the Chapman thing makes me laugh, because to me, it's like, okay, this is the end of my career and I know it. So whoever signs me, I'll just go and play. And maybe, just maybe, he hangs around long enough to get traded to a contender if he has a good first half. That's my only belief, that he'll be around at the end of the season next year. Because, again, if you're going to a team that can't score any runs, what kind of job are you going to have to save any games?
Yeah, it's a great point. And when I look at this list, it reinforces some of the things that I'm already kind of preparing for in the AL Central this year. I think it was shocking, I think, for a lot of people, for the Guardians to step up like they did. And, you talk about their X factor and their manager, Terry Francona, but also this is a team that won playing what I would say baseball of the 1950s and 60s, the small ball, the speed, the get on base, the take the extra lead off. I mean, this is a team that did not hit for power. They did the little things and did them well. And I don't think that's going away. Now, having said that, and we just talked about this, if the White Sox can do what that team was built to do, pitch and hit homers, I do think this division lands very differently in 23. Now, what I'll say is, I think this is something that I think we're going to notice when we start getting into the other divisions, like the East divisions and the West divisions. But here in the Central, particularly in the AL Central, I'm not seeing any big impact moves. This is what I call getting better on the margins. And I think there's a lot of hoping and praying and wishing and adding these supplementary pieces for a lot of these teams, White Sox included.
Yeah, I do like the first base move for Josh Bell with the Guardians. I do think that at the moment, even with the addition of Benintendi and Billy Hamilton, even, I still think Cleveland has the upper hand, and here's why. You mentioned a minute or two ago about all the little things that Cleveland does, the small ball, the moving the runner over, all that stuff. Now, what we haven't mentioned yet is the shift is gone. So back to old school, back to real baseball. To me, it's real baseball or old school baseball or whatever you want to call it. I still don't like the DH, but I'm not going to get into that. But now you're getting back to, that hit that went beyond the pitcher. Now, instead of it being an out because the shortstop is playing behind the pitcher, now that's a single. So how are you going to get that guy from first? Well, he's got to have speed again. So are you going to look to gain speed as your year moves on? Have you remembered how to play baseball the old fashioned way 2, 3, 4 years ago? Because it'll be, at least from a fan's perspective, I'm glad to see the shift gone.
I'm right there with you. I think it makes for a much more exciting, fast-paced game. And if I'm sitting there for 3-4 hours, that's certainly what I want to see. I want to see more action, and that opens a lot of possibilities. I mean, I think about just the Sox in general. When you look at their lineup and look at all of their lefty bats, you're thinking about a Gavin Sheets. You're thinking about, a Yasmani Grandal Moncada when they're hitting from the left side. We have Oscar Colas, who's a left-handed prospect. Like, these are guys that are most affected by a shift. Speaking
of, do you think, because this was in the news, are the White Sox going to go after Madrigal?
Oh, that's it. I'm glad.
I think they will.
I think, okay, so I'm glad you brought it up, because a lot of people are kind of poo-pooing it. And I'm going to be honest with you. Right now, there is nothing to be lost by going after Madrigal. There's just nothing. It's taking a flyer at this point with a guy who seemingly can't stay healthy. He has great back-to-ball skills, so why not take a flyer and just get him back on the south side? I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah, same. I think ultimately he'll end up with the Sox because the Cubs will continue to get stronger. They'll bring up their minor leaguers. Nico's job, that's his job. Madrigal's career as a Cub is over because if they're smart, they're gonna ink him in the offseason for a long-term deal. Still waiting for the Ian Happ one to happen, so that's gonna be telling. If the Happ one happens, then Nico will. But Madrigal's officially out of a job, so
effectively, yes,
yeah. So it's in his best interest to ask to be traded.
Yeah, and I think it's funny you bring it up because I listen to the CHGO podcast, both the Cubs and the Sox CHGO, and for those of you who don't know about CHGO, please check them out. They do great work. And the CHGO Cubs team proposed the trade of the Sox acquiring Madrigal, the Sox acquiring Madrigal and Patrick Wisdom, and the Sox sending over Yoan Moncada.
I did not hear that.
What are your thoughts on that? Are you taking that deal?
No, only because we don't have a first baseman, and at least yet, or a third baseman, like a solid one. So, no.
Wait, so I'm going to stop you right there. So you say you don't have a first baseman. So are you like totally ignoring Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer? Do you refuse to believe their existence?
Yes, because I want what's his face to come up.
Mervis.
Thank you, Mervis, and he will come up. But if now there's a couple things there. Mervis will probably DH. And because they got Hosmer at league minimum, again, it's kind of the same thing. Madrigal's, it's not going to cost the White Sox virtually anything to get him back. And they got Hosmer, if I'm not mistaken, it's league minimum because the Padres are paying all of his salary, all or 98% of his salary. So do we need Wisdom? Yeah, I would love to have his bat back. But that's my cat. I don't know, but I don't know what's happened to him. So I'm kind of on the fence. Yeah, maybe, but that's a definite maybe.
Well, and here's why. I mean, from my perspective, to be honest with you, I take that deal all day long because, like I said, I'll take the flyer on Nick Madrigal. Right. I'll take Patrick. Yeah, Patrick Wisdom strikes out a whole hell of a lot, but guess what? He has 20 plus home runs in the last 2 seasons. I'll take that. Right. But then one of the things that I think really is the wrench in that plan is actually on Moncada's side of things because, I mean, Moncada, let's remember, folks, how much this guy is making for little production. So Moncada this year is due $17.8 million, and in 24 he's almost at $25 million. Can you imagine paying someone with that little production $25 million? It hurts my brain and my soul thinking the White Sox are going to be stuck with this guy next year, paying him $25 million. Yeah.
And there's no way anybody's going to take that.
No.
He'll be gone, and the White Sox, that's money they already know they're eating that money. Now he has to produce. He doesn't have a choice.
He doesn't. And in his best interest, he's been in the league now for 4 or 5 seasons. They traded him in the Chris Sale trade as their, the Red Sox, one of their top prospects. And we thought this guy was going to be an all-star, an annual all-star, potentially MVP candidate. And guess what? I don't mean to be down on the guy. I like to be a positive person, but I'll tell you what, if you haven't figured it out in 4 or 5 years, I doubt that it's going to be figured out.
Correct. Yeah. That's not you being negative. That's you being a realist. An MLB, if an MLB player doesn't have it together in 5 years, they're usually not around for 5 years. So yeah, that's not you being negative. That's you being a realist. He's got to turn it around and be done.
I'm about done with it. With you on. So just to sum up the AL Central conversation, folks. So obviously went through the standings. You went through some of those impact ads. So really, what I see this AL Central looking like in 2023 is that, of course, we have the bottom feeders in the Tigers and the Royals. This really is only a 3-team battle in the AL Central between the Guardians, your White Sox, and the Twins. And honestly, it's really hard to pinpoint who I'm giving the division to right now, because more than ever there's just so many and if and buts and possibilities, and the Twins can be dangerous, or they can just totally flop like they have in the last couple of years. The Sox can put it all together. The Twins can, or the Guardians can continue with their small ball. It's a crapshoot at this point.
I would agree.
I hate that we both agree that the Sox may not run away with this. That's terrible.
Yeah, no, they don't know. I think it's the Guardians' division to lose, especially having Francona in the mix and Grifol, starting from scratch with the White Sox.
So here's what I'll say about this, and again, I think when it comes, I think listeners are getting this certainly from me. When it comes to the Sox, I'm an eternal optimist, and I will just go into every season totally gung-ho, total homer. This is going to be great. Everything's going to go awesome. It's days like this where I go, shit, maybe not. But I will say, like, this team, just on paper, and I know we've been saying this, people have been saying this for a couple years now, the White Sox on paper, with the lineup they have, the pitching they have, if everything goes right, this team can win a World Series. And I think that gets me so optimistic, but also so frustrated because it's here. They can do it if they just piece it together.
Yep. And again, this is not an eternal optimist's outlook being a Cubs fan, but every year I can't, to me, you can ask my family, to me, opening day is like Christmas. Everything about opening day, including Lynn Bramer, who the world just lost a few days ago, his broadcasts on opening day were legendary. He was up at 5 a.m. They were at Yoxie's every year for 5 a.m. I have been there in the past. Everything that man did and touched was magical. And opening day to me is like Christmas, and I can't wait for the season to start, and I'm just as optimistic every opening day, every year without fail. I'm like, let's go. Can't wait.
That's the beauty of baseball, my friend. That's why we do this.
Yep.
So let's move on to the NL Central, where things don't look all that different, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Nope.
But let's go ahead, like we did with the AL Central, go ahead and look at the standings first and foremost. So we'll go ahead and get those on the screen here. So let's read through the standings for our folks here. Of course, the Cardinals took the top spot in 2022 with 93 wins. They had a really solid plus 135 run differential, which we can talk about here in a moment. The Brewers came in at second place with 86 wins, only 7 games back, with a plus 37 run differential. Cubs, of course, as we know, took the third spot in the standings with 74 wins. They were a larger 19 games back, and they had a negative 74 run differential. And then Romanelli, you were talking about the big run differentials in the AL Central. Well, there was bigger ones in the NL Central because the Reds, they only won 62 games. Pirates only won 62 games. And the Reds had a negative 167 run differential. The Pirates had a whopping negative 223 run differential. How did this all look to you come season's end in 2022?
Well, if you start from the bottom up, there was nothing to watch. It was barely single A ball. It was horrific. There was nothing to watch, nothing to get excited about. The Cubs have won 74 this past year, 71 the year prior. Nothing really stood out. And the Brewers and Cardinals continue to be the strong teams that they are. I do think that, oh my God, what's his name? The Brewers manager. Jesus, and he used to play for him.
Craig Counsell.
Yeah. I think he is a really good manager. I really do. Yeah. I don't like his scrawny little tail because he continues to beat the Cubs. But he was a great ball player. He's just as good of a manager. And as a Cubs fan, we just hate the Cardinals. But the Cardinals continue to win again. And I'll say the same thing. You have one big market team in the Cubs. St. Louis is mid-market. Milwaukee's mid-market. Cincinnati, I guess, lower mid-market. Pittsburgh, lower mid-market, I guess. Through to and including the fact that we talked about Chapman's career being over, McCutcheon's career is basically over. He's going back home this year to help with the negative 226 to maybe negative 200. But like in looking at the division with who the Cubs added and then who the Cardinals lost. Now they lost both Wainwright and Yachty. And to lose Wainwright and Yachty as the, one of the top 1-2 catchers in the history of baseball is a big loss. However, the Cardinals gained Wilson Contreras, who tears the cover off the ball, and I know we'll get there.
Yeah, I actually do want to put it up on the screen because you're mentioning some things that are honestly huge, and I want to make sure we pull up the list here because what I will say as we pull up this list is let's make it very clear here. We're starting with these divisions, the central divisions, AL, NL, respectively, because that's where our teams reside. But the reality of it is these are the two weakest divisions in baseball by a pretty substantial margin, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, they're awful. They're awful. There's not one, and the National League East proved it last year with the Braves and the Phillies playing out of their mind, just out of their mind. And just that one addition for the Cardinals, hey, it kills me. Like, that's 55 games this year that, as a lifelong Cubs fan, I have to watch Wilson Contreras in Cardinal red.
Oof.
You may as well stab my eyes out with a toothpick.
Okay, so I don't mean to kind of put salt on the wound here, but did you see that Chip Carey is joining the Cardinals broadcast team?
Yeah, and I actually said that online. I was like, well, they've already got Wilson. I did. That's exactly what I said. I was like, well, they've already got Wilson. So to me, it's no surprise that Carey's gone there. I mean, ultimately, that's where Harry started. Harry started with the Cardinals, then the White Sox, then the Cubs. So I said to you before that the baseball gods are unforgiving. So Wilson goes over there, and now Chip goes over there. I don't know I've ever seen Chip throw a baseball, but just the order of the baseball world. It's hurtful to see Contreras go there. Did he earn the money? Absolutely. Is he worth the money? Yeah, because I said this last year. He would have been the National League's Yachty had he stayed with the Cubs. His locker room presence and his understanding of the game. Yes, he may not have caught guys as well, but he made up for it in a million different ways. And to watch him tutor Christopher Morel, who will start ultimately next year or this upcoming year, it's because of the way Contreras was a leader for Morel specifically. And now he's gone. And that's one of the things you and I talked about. Who's my clubhouse leader with the Cubs? It's not. I know Hap is a cool dude. We saw him at the convention, but is he a clubhouse leader? I don't know. I don't necessarily know that. So is it going to be Swanson who's just coming over? Maybe by his play, maybe, hopefully. Bellinger has the experience, but again, they've got one season to gel quickly. The same way I said with the White Sox, everybody being new. I mean, look at that list. The Cubs list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've reinvented the team. You blew it up, which is fine because it's what it needed. Because again, 74 and 71 wins the last 2 years respectively. So, but I think the Swanson signing was a smart one. 7 years. I think he's going to be worth the money. Outside of that, Talon gets me excited because he's a big boy. He gets me excited for his pitching because he 120 plus or 140 innings, something like that last year. Bellinger, we know, is a stopgap because you've got PCA coming up And who else is coming up from the Cubs?
Well, let's see. So Brennan Davis may be in play once he gets healthy.
Once he gets healthy.
Matt Mervis, of course, we expect here very soon. Alexander Canario actually continues to impress with his bat. He may be someone you throw in the outfield too here in the next 2 years or so.
Yeah, and again, I think that's why I said, oh my goodness, Bellinger. That's why he's a stopgap. And talk about paying somebody $17 million for a year, dude. That's insane. You should not be paying him $17 million. Bring the kid up and let him see what he can do, because there's no point not to let those guys gel. As I look top to bottom, Contreras was the right signing for the Cardinals, no question. To me, it looks like when I look at the Brewers signings, they just grabbed as many people as they possibly could. I mean, you've got Anderson,
Wilson's brother.
Yeah, which I actually kind of like because they'll face each other enough. But again, the Cubs have to face Contreras 11 times. But they grabbed a third base outfielder in Anderson, a starting pitcher, a relieving pitcher, a utility player, and actually Anderson as a third base and outfielder is also a utility player, another outfielder, and an infielder. Milwaukee's just like, we're going to grab everybody.
And here's the thing with Milwaukee. They do, I feel like every offseason, that's exactly what they do. They just grab these random bunch of players, never for the big splashy players, but always these random bunch of players, and somehow still find their way winning 85, 87 games and being in play. And it just blows me away.
Yeah, and I think that's because of their manager, whose name, again, evades me.
Craig Counsell. I'm gonna put a Post-it note right on your wall.
Yeah,
Craig Counsell.
Because I'm old. Yeah, Craig Counsell. I do. I think he's a good manager.
Yes.
And as I look at the bottom two teams, maybe Rich Hill pitches well enough to get picked up at the trade deadline with a contending team, because any team can use a good, solid left-handed pitcher. All the other names mean nothing to me. Carlos Santana doesn't impress me. Choi doesn't impress me. I mean, you've got two first basemen. They're not really worth discussing. Cincinnati in Will Myers, that's the only name of any impact. The Cubs just kind of did what the Brewers did. Now let's see which team does better from a management perspective. Does Swanson come through again the way he did with Atlanta? Can Bellinger rebound? Mancini, and then
tell me how you really feel.
Yeah. And then again, Hosmer. Again, we're not paying for Hosmer, so that's fine. From a division's perspective, and the fact that we're in the weakest division, that is the one thing that gives me hope this year. If the Cubs can put everything together, but I still don't know from a pitching perspective. That Hendricks is still not 100%, so he may or may not be ready by the beginning of the season. Bullpen perspective, I don't know that they're going to be super strong to go 7, 8, 9 if and when they need to. And again, a negative 77 run differential that the Cubs had last year. I don't see that changing much unless Suzuki maybe goes off. The one thing I am excited for is to have, the second baseman. I'm just drawing a blank. I'm just really tired.
Oh, Nico playing second.
Yeah, who I already talked about. Nico, I'm excited for him to lead off. It's where he belongs. I think he's a natural second base player, a natural second baseman, and a natural leadoff hitter. He's a line drive hitter. I think he's going to be good, really good for that team. I said it to my nephew actually years ago when Nico came up. I'm like, this guy is going to be a perennial all-star, but he's got to stay healthy for the love of God.
Yeah.
Which is the one reason I think that the Cubs haven't inked him to a long-term deal yet. He hasn't proven that he can play a full season. But I also think now that he's at home at second base and at home in the leadoff spot, he can relax a little, and hopefully the strength and conditioning team does a good enough job with him that he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I sure hope so. I mean, to have an up the middle of that caliber with the addition of Dansby Swanson, and we talked about this in passing before. I mean, to have, I know, Bellinger's not the long term solution, but just to have Dansby and Nico up the horner. Yeah, let's put that on a T-shirt. Hey, obvious shirts, up the horner. Here we go. If you have those two up the middle, that's baseball I want to watch. Yeah. That sounds like a fun time.
Yep, I can't wait. Cannot wait.
As we look at this division, here's where I struggle with what the Cubs done up to this point is, have they made some impact ads that are going to help them now and later? Sure, of course. But again, it comes back to this whole weaker division situation where they have one thing going for them. They're in the weaker division. What they don't have going for them is they haven't done enough to push the envelope to, one, get a wild card spot with all these strong NL teams, and two, they can win the division all they want. That's the only way they're going to get into the playoffs this year, is if they win this division, which is going to be a difficult task. But when you get there, this team is not playoff caliber. No. October. So, I mean, I struggle with understanding the thought process, because they're telling us they want to win a division. That's the only way they're going to get there. But when you get there, you're not showing up with the right tools. I don't understand.
Yeah, not only do I not understand, I am beyond disappointed in Jed's ability to grow a farm system while at the same time strengthening your on-field team. Like, you've got 7 guys on that list. You did nothing last year. You did nothing the year. I mean, nothing. On anything under 500 to me is nothing, because it doesn't even show that you're not playing average baseball. You can't win. And because the National League East is so strong, like you said, the only way they're getting in is winning the division. And the only way that's going to happen is if everything, almost just like the Sox, almost if everything works out perfectly, because you have to beat Milwaukee, which was in the plus column for run differential. You have to beat St. Louis, which is your, one of the ultimate baseball rivals, which is also like your Bears versus Green Bay kind of thing. You have to beat those 2 teams or forget it. It's over.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't know. I think I have, and we'll get into this in over the next couple of weeks when we do the rest of the division previews, but you would think that we would have a better grasp on these divisions, seeing as this is where our teams sit. But I don't know how this is going to play out with either division, including the NL Central, because the Milwaukee can tank really at any moment. I know they're competitive every year with what they put together. I still don't trust them. I do think they're a high risk team to just all of a sudden go off the deep end next year. I think the Cardinals are going to be strong. I think at the end of the day, if I had to pick today, this becomes a 1.5 team race. And I say 1.5, it's because the Cardinals are going to be there. But I think the Brewers and the Cubs are equally inadequate and are not going to really push St. Louis like they need to be pushed. I think St. Louis comfortably wins this division next year.
I agree with you. And it hurts me to no end knowing that Contreras is on his way to the playoffs.
Yeah.
It just, like, why didn't you sign him, you morons?
I'm trying to picture in my brain when I watch a game. It doesn't have to be Cardinals against Cubs. It's going to be Cardinals against anybody, because I know eventually I'm going to turn it on.
Right.
And I'm going to see him in a Cardinals jersey, and it's going to be just freaking weird.
Yeah. They've done that for years, like seeing speaking of Cardinals, seeing Jim Edmonds when he was an Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Or Maddox when he was a Padre. Like, ew. Like,
it's very weird. Yeah, very weird. Did you feel that way with Brent Suter? He was a Cubs to Cardinals guy.
Oh, Bruce Sutter?
Bruce Sutter, sorry.
No,
Bruce
okay. I don't know. I knew I was mad when it happened. I was a little kid, and I was 13, 14. So, like, you want to talk about prime baseball age, like just
oh yeah,
that's all you did. You lived and breathed baseball and played it in the parks in the summer. So to watch him go there, I remember it hurting a little because, God, could he pitch? That, if I'm not mistaken, he was the one who brought the split finger fastball to life. And you would just
Correct.
watch that ball drop. And just how did he do that? And he had so much movement on his body, but then the ball would just fall. And then to the only redeeming moments having Suter in a Cardinals uniform was the quote unquote Ryan Sandberg game. Because Suter gave up 2 home runs to Sandberg in those 2 innings that the Cubs ended up eventually winning. That is the only redeeming quality to see Bruce Sutter in a Cardinals uniform, because to me, he'll always be a Cub first.
Well, I guess we'll see. If we have Jameson Taillon going up there against Wilson and pitching Wilson 3 strikeout game for Wilson, maybe we feel better about this whole situation.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Awesome. So that kind of wraps up our NL-AL Central preview this week. So
went by quickly.
Today went by quickly. I think we're very excited to get into the Central, and quite frankly, I'm very excited. Next week, we're going to get into the AL and NL East. Of course, the week after, we'll finish off with the West. And I'll tell you what, these conversations really, Romanelli, are more important than ever. And if those of you that don't know already, when you talk about teams in your division, it used to be you played them 15, 16, 17 times a year. Well, this year, for the first time ever, with a new balanced schedule, every MLB team will be playing every other MLB team at least once. And I am really excited about that.
Me too. It brings the variety to the game. As a purist, I still like, the National League and the American League, but I get it, and it's fine. But yeah, to see, at some point see the Cubs play Seattle, like how great that would be. Just that kind of stuff. It's good for the game. It is.
Absolutely.
Oh, and speaking of the Cubs and Cardinals, it's a shame neither one of us have enough money to fly to London to watch them play at Wembley.
Yeah.
Just hit me just now.
I mean, you're right. And it's something, when that comes, we're going to be talking about it here on the Crosstown Baseball Show, about how that all goes down, kind of covering that. I just don't know what to expect. And I would love to just see how the crowds are, how the ballpark is. It would be a cool experience.
Yeah. And if we have people listening who would like to GoFundMe page us and sponsor us to go, we would love that. We would love that.
Well, let me get my passport now, because I do not have one.
Yeah,
so
neither do I.
We'll get on that. So one other thing that we threw around, and I'm going to tease it here, okay, which is a little tease. We haven't finalized the plans yet, but something Romanelli and I were talking about the other day is we want to get listeners involved in a Crosstown Baseball Fantasy Baseball League for this season. Now, what that would entail, folks, is we're looking to anyone who's interested to reach out to us. We're going to go ahead and set a date, probably a Sunday night, for like we usually do for our shows. We'll do the draft, and as the draft's happening, we'll record the draft here and put it out as an episode and commentate the draft, which I geek out with fantasy drafts. So we're going to have a good time. Yeah,
it'll be fun. My lone issue with having a fantasy baseball team is the effort to keep it going after, like game 62. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't set my team in 4 days.
Have it go on an auto setting. You'll be fine. Let it ride and die.
That's fine. Just like
minimal effort.
That's what I could name my team. I could name my team Dazed and Confused already.
Dazed and Confused. That's perfect. Chef's kiss.
Before it even starts.
Beautiful. Well, folks, that's it for today's episode of the Crosstown Baseball Show. What I'll say is, again, a reminder, I'm going to say it all the time, do us a huge favor, help us out by subscribing to the YouTube channel, liking the videos. Hey, where's that sign?
Bam!
Bam! Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
And ye shall receive.
There you go. Folks, next week, join us. We'll be doing another division preview. We're going to be talking the AL and the NL East and talking about those damn Mets owned by Steve Cohen. Oh my goodness. Until next time, folks, go White Sox.
Go Cubs.
Take care.
Have a good one.